What's going on, everybody? Jackass with ApexHead.com, bringing you episode 14 of the F1 2012 I Am No Expert Career Mode series, and as you can see, competing here at Singapore, the only night race on the F1 calendar. And team objective with Sauber is to qualify 8th or above. Taking a quick look at the weather, and as you can see, going to be our dry race, so not going to be worried about that with our setup. Going to go ahead and get that dialed in. Had a pretty wet practice session, so haven't had a chance to really get a feel for the Sauber in the dry, but this setup was doing me the best, at least in the times that I could get out and get in some quality laps. As you can see, gearbox turned all the way down. This is a really deceiving track. It's actually one of my least favorites to race because the apexes are so strange. But the one nice thing about this time around is that I was actually able to learn the gears better. I think oftentimes I had been shifting into the wrong gear for a lot of the corners, and that probably really hurt my performance here. But this time around I felt at least comfortable, even though, of course, I'm still not that great at it. But let's see what we can do to get through the weekend. Starting off here in Q1 and setting an early time, getting up to P1, but of course most cars haven't gone out yet, and I apologize. I actually lost the end of my capture files for that section, but was able to get into Q2, so not really that important. I actually ended up having wing damage on the following lap, and had to go back in and decided to save my tires and let the times roll, and ended up not having any problems getting into Q2. So here we are at the start of our first time lap in Q2, and coming down to turn 1. Let's see what happens down here. Rolling up over the curb, and you can see immediately get a time invalidated on my first corner, so that was pretty frustrating. Gonna have to go around again, and you can see that my tires are pretty worn out. And these are the same ones that I was using in Q1, so this was a big reason why I didn't spend a lot of time trying to set hot laps in the first session, because I wanted to save my tires. You can see here in Q2 down in P15, and that's not a good result. Now down into P13 after a handful of laps, and trying to get things right coming around the final sector, and maybe working against my better judgment of saving the tires. Kind of anxious to try and get into Q3, so let's see what happens here at the end of the lap, at the expense of what could be our race day tires, and see how things go. And across the line up into P10, and not sure if that's going to hold up. I've got a pretty good little gap to Petrov, so for right now that time's safe. So you can see coming around at the end of lap 5 and having all kinds of problems here. And that's it, not going to worry about it anymore. The session coming to an end, going to go ahead and pull it in. And 5 laps is actually quite a few for me in Q2, so that's unusual. But in this case it pays off, able to get into the top 10. And that's going to set us up for Q3. And our teammate Kamui Kobayashi qualifying 13th. And just noticing Roman Grosjean nowhere to be found. He might have been out in Q1. And don't forget, he's our rival for the race, or I'm assuming for the rest of the season. So that's actually a really good sign, and hopefully something that we can exploit on race day, as long as we don't have a retirement or, you know, some kind of a major off. And speaking of major offs, here at turn 5, going way too wide, and that's terminal damage into the wall, taking out the left front wheel and of course the suspension, and that's going to end my session. I waited until the 5-minute mark to go out, and really couldn't do anything with it. Obviously not able to set a time, gonna have to settle for P10, but at least we were in Q3, and that may help, although I've got a feeling at Singapore probably going to be relatively easy to get around the AI in the first couple of corners, but I hope I don't jinx myself by thinking that. So here we are on race day, or race evening, and as you can see, team objective has been adjusted to 7th position. Starting grid, Sebastian Vettel on pole position, Mark Webber right behind, all Red Bull front row. Paul di Resta in P3, that's an impressive start for the Force India car. And Karthikeyan qualifying 13th, what in God's name is going on here? And look at this at the bottom of the grid, Fernando Alonso in last position, Lewis Hamilton in 23rd, and Jenson Button in 21st. So I have to assume that those 3 guys had problems with their cars, maybe had terminal damage or something, because this grid is definitely the most unique that I've seen all year long. So starting out here on the option tires, and I do believe that they are the same ones that I used in qualifying, despite the fact that I had the accident. I forgot to check, but pretty sure they are the used ones. And we will be pitting for prime tires around lap 7. And despite the engineer's recommendation for a cautious fuel strategy, going to go ahead and scrap that and use normal. Haven't had any problems using normal this whole time. In fact, usually I have a handful of extra laps of fuel at the end of the race, so that seems to be working just fine for me, although I am tempted to try out the aggressive fuel strategy sometime, but I think a lot of it depends on the circumstances of the race and how you're comparing to the rest of the field. So here we are to start here at Singapore, looking at the back of Nico Hulkenberg in the Force India, lined up next to Jean-Eric Vergne in the Toro Rosso, and here we go. Terrible start, not a very good start at all. Competing down into turn 1, and already getting overtaken by Schumacher and the Caterham, and able to drift down up into P9. Let's see if we can find some space coming around turn 2. And yes, plenty of real estate actually, now accelerating out and steering at the back of Maldonado in the Williams as he chases Mark Webber down. Let's see what happens up here at turn 5, where I had the problem in qualifying. Very tight coming around there, rolling up over the curb, but able to get ahead of Maldonado. Where are we? Yes, we are able to get up into P4, staring at the back of Sebastian Vettel in the Red Bull. Let's see what we can do coming down to the very hard braking corner of Nicole. Able to get in front of Vettel and avoiding contact with Webber and able to swing up into P3, and that's not going to make Sebastian Vettel very happy. Coming around the very slow turn 8, and a little bit of wheel spin coming out of that corner as we speed down Stamford, now around turn 9 onto St. Andrews Road. And let's see what kind of pace the AI has. As you can see, Mark Webber speeding away pretty good, and I've got a feeling that I'm not going to lose Sebastian Vettel anytime soon, but of course that's not helped by the fact that, quite frankly, I'm just not that good at this circuit. You can see butchering that chicane there, one of the toughest on the circuit, and in fact there might even be one that's a little more difficult a little bit later on that I'll point out. Now getting around the very slow hairpin, and you can see that Sebastian Vettel falling back now. Pretty good train of cars behind him, and couldn't be any happier with this start. As we come down to the very strange turn 14 and accelerating out, and now coming up to the sets of corners that I'd mentioned before, probably the most difficult chicane on the circuit for me. Here's turn 15 and now 16, and getting it all wrong here and losing the car, and there goes Sebastian Vettel, getting around me just as easily as though he had just been ordered by Horner to hold his position, and not going to be able to do anything about it coming through the very slow turn 18, now 19. Let's see if we can get around and get caught up with him coming through here. Not able to do so. Now being haunted by Maldonado and getting more wheel spin on the curb, and that was basically a disaster. Here comes Maldonado along the outside, but he's going to run out of track, coming around here as quickly as we can, all the way in 4th gear, and Maldonado trying to get down at least wheel to wheel as we come down back into turn 1 here at the start of lap 2, holding a P4 position. And that was exceptionally spirited, and had to think there was no way I was going to hold off Vettel anyway, but was anxious to try and at least hold that for as long as I could, but no matter. Riding P4 now, being hounded by the Williams. The Williams cars are extremely quick. Bruno Senna qualified 6th or 7th, I believe, and very close contact there with the wall. Almost started to look like what happened in my Q3 session, but thankfully avoid contact. Let's see what kind of pace Maldonado's got. He's not going to have a chance to get around here, but I can tell this is definitely an AI speed trap. And this is where I'm going to have to fight it out with Maldonado or whoever's behind me for the rest of the race, no question about it. Every circuit's got at least 2 areas. In fact, skipping ahead here to lap 3 to the exact same part of the circuit, and you can see Maldonado looks like he's going to have plenty of time to make a go. And DRS now enabled, and here he comes along the outside. Let's see if he's got the time to get around. And it looks like he will not be able to do so here at Nicole as long as I don't have a problem, and I do not. So able to fend off the Williams for now. And as you can see, trimming a little bit of time, but still over 4 seconds behind Vettel, and that's not going to improve as we skip ahead to the same part of the track here in lap 4. And you can see still trying to fend off Maldonado, and I can tell this is going to be a duel that's going to go into the pits. But now Raikkonen has overtaken P5, and now the Lotus has gotten ahead. And let's find out what kind of pace he's got. Obviously, he's fast enough to get around Maldonado, so I have a feeling the Iceman's going to be breathing down her neck before we know it. And starting to lose my focus coming through there, and that's definitely going to help his cause. Trying to get around this chicane the right way, still don't have it right. Coming up over the Anderson Bridge, slowing down, trying to get down the Esplanade as quickly as we can, and able to avoid Kimi getting around us for now. But let's see what kind of pace he's got. You can see he's falling back. That's probably the only spot where I have any kind of pace over the AI. So skipping ahead at the end of lap 4, and you can see Raikkonen not going into pit, able to trim off about 1/3 of a second coming down here through turn 1. And that leads me to believe that Kimi's going to try and pit at the same time we do, but still have a couple laps to go before we're scheduled to do so. Could be wrong, but you can see he's all over our gearbox as we come out down Republic. And let's see what happens after we get around turn 5 and onto Raffles. That's when the DRS zone is going to be activated, and see what kind of pace the Lotus has. We've got a pretty good gap for now, but that gets cinched up very, very quickly. And here he comes. Let's see if he makes a move on the left-hand side. Looks like he's not going to have enough time, and he falls back now. But looking at timing and scoring, Kimi only 0.3 of a second behind us, so obviously no gap at all. And meanwhile, Vettel has built up almost a 9-second gap up into P3, so that's pretty much a lost dream at this point as we come down St. Andrews, and you can see just how quick the AI is, and that's not true just for the Lotus. That was also true for Maldonado and the Williams, so the AI very quick through there, trying to get things right coming up over those curbs. And tires feeling a little bit slippery and starting to lose the car here. And here comes Kimmy on the left-hand side. There is contact. Wheels did touch, but we are able to avoid damage. Now really feeling the pressure, trying to swing around here and avoid wing damage. Coming down the Esplanade, and you can see that Kimmy falling back now. But here only in lap 5, have to think it's just a matter of time before the Finn's going to get around us, coming around turn 14. And heading into Raffles Avenue, my most difficult sequence of corners, turns 15, 16, and 17. There's 15, trying to get things right, going over 16, and starting to lose the grip on the car yet again, and this time Kimmy's going to be able to get around easily. Trying to chase him down through turn 18. Let's see if we can catch him through here. Extremely narrow coming through, and of course very difficult to overtake. Really at this point just hoping to keep up with him. Hopefully get him around the start-finish straight, but right now losing time badly. And might have to think that that position's gone for good. Got some significant tire wear as we come around here and starting to go wide, coming around the final corner and able to keep it on track. Now trying to fend off Hulkenberg in the Force India. And pretty concerned about my tires at this point. The Sauber's been traditionally very good with its tires leading up to this race. Many times I haven't had to go into pit when I was scheduled to because of how good the tires were doing. But there you can see losing grip coming out of the exit. And concerned that I might not be able to make it all the way to my pit stop. Let's see what happens here. Coming down Raffles Boulevard. See what kind of pace we have with the Force India. Nico Hulkenberg pushing very, very hard. And contact there. You can see him backing off now. Might have chipped his wing. I definitely heard some kind of contact. I was drifting back into my line and Hulkenberg was putting his nose where he probably shouldn't have. And that was the result. But obviously very concerned about grip because of how slippery this track is anyway, even with traction control. And hoping that I can keep things online. So now coming around at the end of lap 6, and you can see still maintaining in front of Nico Hulkenberg, but being very, very ginger with the throttle and very, very careful with my tires. Let's see if Kimmy goes into pit. Looks like he's going to. Going to give it one more go, coming around the start-finish straight, and let's see what kind of ground we can gain up into P2 because of the pit stops, but you can see that my tires are absolutely gone. And it's going to be a challenge to stay ahead of Nico, who did stay out. And here's that audio problem again, where the audio cuts out for just a second. But anyway, back to the race. All about survival at this point. Just concerned about staying ahead of the Force India. Not going to push very hard. I can't push very hard. You can see Nico extremely quick. He should have time to get around. And there he goes along the outside. Let's see if we can get him at the braking point. This is going to make the difference in the race, given the positions. Able to pull back in front of him and make it stick, rolling up over the curve, back up into P2. But again, look at my tires. Absolutely shredded as I get props from the engineer about what kind of a drive we're having. And of course, it's not going to work out to be quite that good of a position in the end, but hopefully we can get into the top 6 or so. So now skipping ahead at the end of lap 7, and again being very ginger and starting to lose the car, rolling up over the curb, desperately trying to stay ahead of Nico using the KERS, and able to stay ahead of him, and I'm sure he's coming into pit now. This is a really tricky pit entry, very difficult to pull in right. Changing our fuel mix down to lean just to save a few drops. The leaders have already gone into pit, and it looks like there's a handful of teams lined up, and I see Force India's lined up, so that tells me that Nico's probably behind us. Let's hope that the team can get us out in a reasonable time. Just over 3 seconds, highly impressive. Nico not even pulled out yet, and that's very good. Maintaining P5 for now, but here comes a car, and that's going to put us down into P6. There goes Kimmy, and that's not very surprising given the pace of the Lotus. And speaking of the pit entry, the pit exit also very tricky. Really don't want to go over that white line. That's good for a penalty. And so now want to get these cold tires warmed up. And again, want to be very, very careful. Got a little bit of a cushion for now, but look who's coming behind us. Roman Grosjean, our rival. And I'm not sure if he's gone in yet. I've got a feeling that he hasn't. Remember, he started way down the bottom of the order. And now coming around turn 13, and there goes the front wing. Let's listen in to the engineer. Slight damage. Don't have to go into pit, but that was extremely disappointing and a very close call. The last thing I could afford to do is have severe wing damage, just trying to stay ahead of Grosjean. And getting back to my thought before the problem, don't think he's gone into pit. I hope not. He's giving me a lot of pressure coming around turn 18. And now the car is starting to feel a little warmed up and feeling like I've got a little more grip. And of course my concentration a little more dialed in here nearing the end of lap 8. Riding P7 for now. Failed to mention that Schumacher was able to get around us coming out of the pit stops. And upping our fuel mix now to try and burn off some extra laps. And it looks like we will pass someone. Now we're up into P6. And as you can see, Roman Grosjean not going into pit yet. And that leads me to believe that he did start on the prime tires. I'd be very surprised if he pit early on with the options. So hoping to keep him in our rearview mirrors. Remember, we do want to beat him basically every single race. We're up on him 2-zip right now, but still got a handful of races to go on the season. So here comes Grosjean down the DRS zone. Let's see what he's got. Here he comes on the left-hand side. This is a familiar scene. He's not going to be able to get around, even though it looks like he does have the pace. And let's see if we go wide here. Extremely easy to. You can see shaving off a good deal of time thanks to the pit stops. And coming around here, just trying to be very careful. The AI typically not too aggressive as long as you stay on your line, starting to drift a little bit wide there. And again, the AI extremely quick coming down St. Andrews. Let's hope we don't get things wrong coming up over the curbs. I used to have that corner so much more mastered, and somehow I've lost it. I don't know what's happened, but really haven't hit it that well the entire race. So now coming over the Anderson Bridge and back around to the dreaded turn 13, handling it a lot better this time. And even though it's probably not the end of the world if Grosjean's able to get by us, because I think he is going to go in, you still don't want to lose that kind of time. You never know what's going to happen up front, although I will say in the Codemasters F1 games, it seems like AI problems on track are very, very rare. It's very unusual to see them having problems. As you can see, it's starting to go a little bit wide there. So even though we can't count on there being AI problems, you never know. Certainly don't want to lose position no matter what's going to happen. So hopefully here at the end of lap 9, Romain Grosjean will go in, and he should be out of our hair for the rest of the race unless we have problems. Again, anything can happen here at Marina Bay. No matter how good you feel or how comfortable you are, all it takes is one mistake. So there goes Grosjean, and that's going to leave me with Nico Hülkenberg in the Force India to compete to the bitter end. And still, because we have a handful of laps to go, going to go ahead and save a little bit of fuel. Probably start burning that off again around lap 13 or so. So skipping ahead to the start of lap 11, and you can see Nico Hülkenberg having none of it, and he's anxious to get around me. By the time we hit lap 13 or so, he'll probably be pushing extremely hard. Let's see what happens coming down the DRS zone. This is where the AI has gotten me almost every single lap, at least given me some kind of a threat. And remember, we came into contact earlier, and you can see that Nico Hülkenberg not being as aggressive this time, even though he had the pace. And again, able to maintain my lines coming through these corners, which typically give me a hard time. So feeling pretty happy with how I've handled things so far. Even though, of course, we do have the minor front wing damage, which is hampering our performance. But I've got more to do with that than the fact that I have a damaged front wing. So skipping ahead to the end of lap 11 and getting pushed very, very hard by Hülkenberg. Getting a little slippery coming around the corner there. And Nico pushing extremely hard coming down the start-finish straight. Going ahead and up my fuel mix. Going to have to try and build a gap now. One minor mistake is all it's going to take for the Force India to take over, and I really want to keep this P6 if I can. But going back to the broken front wing, that could be slowing me down just a little bit, because Nico all of a sudden getting faster in some areas where he wasn't before. And you can see that was an extremely close call into the wall, and Nico very close now, and he's going to have an easy opportunity to get around, able to do so. Let's see if we can get him at the braking point yet again. Another duel coming down into Nicole, and once again able to get back in front of the Force India car. I'm sure much to the chagrin of him. And now coming around here in contact with the tire. No damage to the left front tire, but did drift into it. And starting to lose my grip on the track just a little bit, even with the prime tires. This circuit is absolutely tearing up all my rubber. And trying to keep things online coming through here. And hopefully we don't have any problems coming around turn 13. Once we get over to the Anderson Bridge, let's see what happens. Slight contact there on the right front wheel. No puncture, it appears. But you can see that Hülkenberg is very swift coming out of the exit, which has actually been unique for this race. So now skipping ahead to lap 13, and let's see if Hülkenberg's going to make a move here. Remember, we've already had a couple of duels coming down here already, and including earlier contact with his front wing. I wonder if he got his wing changed. Oh, speaking of front wings, there goes the other side of it. And now I've got some pretty significant damage. And the engineer advising, hey, if you want to come in, go ahead and do it. But with this kind of time left, there's no way. So now skipping ahead here to lap 15, and all kinds of problems coming out of turn 14. And let's see if Hülkenberg's able to take advantage. Coming into turn 15, please God, let me get through this. Going very, very slow. This is the last time we got to go through it. And all I want to do is stay ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. And able to do so for now. Coming around turn 18, just got a few more corners to get through it. And should be able to secure P6, but even with just a handful of corners, don't want to get ahead of myself. And you can see just how ginger I'm being. Hülkenberg can't be happy with any of this, but it won't matter now as we come around the final two corners. and able to finish in P6, so a very good result here in Marina Bay. And let's find out where our teammate in Grosjean finished. Kamui finished in 17th, so not a good race for him at all. And Grosjean able to climb a few spots, but still only 14th. So let's take a quick look at the race results. Mark Webber winning the race. Paul di Resta able to finish second. And Michael Schumacher there in the 5th spot. Vitaly Petrov in the Caterham finishing in 8th. I can't believe I'm seeing this. And looking at the bottom of the grid, you can see that Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button, a very forgettable day for McLaren, not able to finish the race. And Fernando Alonso able to get up into 18th after his extremely poor start at the back of the grid. And not to be forgotten, Charles Pic finishing 12th with the Marussia car. And Pedro de la Rosa on the HRT finishing 16th. So the planets must be in alignment. You're not going to see a stranger result than that one at any point during the rest of the season, I'm sure of it. I'm going to leave you guys with some race highlights here. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Trying to get these posted about every couple of weeks. They are very, very time consuming, and if you've been monitoring my channel, you can see that I've been extremely busy with a lot of new content. And really excited about my new Grid series. Seem to be getting good feedback on that, and hopefully it'll be a nice little ramp up for Grid 2 at the end of May. But in the meantime, in F1 2012, going to be starting on Suzuka right away and taking a look at how we can do in Japan as we start to get towards the bitter end of the season. And so far so good in terms of beating out our teammate and rival. Hopefully we can keep up at it. So that's going to wrap things up here at Marina Bay. I'll hope to see you in Japan. I'm Jack Acid. Thanks again.